Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, a magical fairy tale adventure. Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, there was a beautiful princess named Snow White. Her skin was as white as snow, her lips as red as blood, and her hair as black as ebony. She lived in a grand castle with her stepmother, the queen, who was envious of Snow White's beauty. The queen owned a magical mirror, and every day she would ask, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" For years, the mirror always replied, "You, my queen, are the fairest of them all." But one day, the mirror replied, "Snow White is the fairest of them all." Consumed by jealousy, the queen devised a plan to get rid of Snow White. The queen ordered a huntsman to take Snow White into the forest and kill her. However, the huntsman, moved by Snow White's innocence and beauty, couldn't bring himself to harm her. Instead, he told her to run away and never return to the castle. Snow White, frightened and alone, wandered deep into the forest. After hours of walking, she stumbled upon a quaint little cottage. Exhausted, she knocked on the door, but no one answered. She entered the cottage and found it to be very small, with 7 tiny beds. Too tired to explore further, she lay down across the beds and fell into a deep sleep. Later that evening, the owners of the cottage returned. They were 7 dwarfs who worked in the nearby diamond mines. Their names were Doc, Grumpy, Happy, Sleepy, Bashful, Sneezy, and Dopey. When they entered the cottage and found Snow White sleeping, they were both surprised and curious. "Who is she?" Doc, the leader of the dwarfs, wondered aloud. "Maybe she's a princess," said Happy, marveling at her beauty. Snow White awoke to find the dwarfs staring at her. She explained her story and how she came to their cottage. The dwarfs, feeling sorry for her, offered her a place to stay in exchange for helping them with household chores. Grateful and with nowhere else to go, Snow White agreed. Days turned into weeks, and Snow White quickly became a part of the dwarfs' lives. She cooked, cleaned, and sang with them, bringing joy and laughter to their little cottage. The dwarfs adored her and took care of her as if she were their own sister. Meanwhile, back at the castle, the queen discovered that Snow White was still alive. Enraged, she concocted a plan to kill Snow White herself. Using her dark magic, she disguised herself as an old peddler woman and created a poisoned apple. One day, while the dwarfs were away at the mines, the queen arrived at the cottage disguised as the peddler woman. She knocked on the door and offered Snow White the poisoned apple, claiming it was a magical fruit that granted wishes. Innocently, Snow White took a bite of the apple and immediately fell into a deep, enchanted sleep. When the dwarfs returned home, they found Snow White lying lifeless on the floor. Devastated, they placed her in a glass coffin and kept watch over her day and night, hoping she would awaken. News of Snow White's plight spread throughout the kingdom, reaching the ears of a handsome prince who had once met and fallen in love with her. The prince traveled to the dwarf's cottage, and seeing Snow White in the glass coffin, was heartbroken. He leaned over and kissed her gently on the lips. The magical kiss broke the spell, and Snow White awoke, much to the joy of the dwarfs and the prince. Snow White and the prince returned to the castle, where the wicked queen, upon seeing Snow White alive and well, fled in terror, never to be seen again. The kingdom rejoiced at Snow White's return, and she and the prince were married in a grand celebration. Snow White invited the 7 dwarfs to live at the castle, where they were honored and loved by all. Together, they embarked on many more magical adventures, filled with love, friendship, and the enduring power of good over evil. And so Snow White and her friends lived happily ever after. Their story passed down through the ages as a testament to the magic of true love and the strength of the human spirit.